My own sister tried to frame me for her embezzlement at our family business to kick me out. But her plan backfired when I gathered evidence and went to the authorities. I, 29M, work at my family's distribution company, a business my father founded decades ago and hoped to pass down through our bloodline. My mother handles much of the administrative side, and my older sister, 3 years my senior, has been in charge of the finances for the past few years. We once saw ourselves as a tight-knit unit, aiming to build something lasting for future generations. But that sense of unity began to fracture when unexplained transactions showed up in our monthly financial reports, and my trust in my own sister started to unravel. I've been managing sales and inventory for nearly 5 years, so my role usually had me traveling to meet clients, checking warehouse stock, and overseeing deliveries. Financial oversight wasn't my department, that was my sister's responsibility. She alone managed the accounts and daily ledgers, which our parents trusted her to handle responsibly. Because we were family, I never initially doubted her integrity. But when I found that certain expenses on our balance sheets didn't match actual costs, I grew uneasy. These weren't minor arithmetic slips, they were recurrent, and they always turned up on days my sister processed paperwork alone. When I confronted her, she brushed it off as a small reporting delay. Her dismissal felt strangely hollow. Over the next few weeks, I tried to maintain an open mind. I was just being paranoid. However, the sums in question kept growing, and the explanations my sister provided never aligned with the documentation I found in the filing cabinets. One afternoon, I decided to dig deeper. Since my responsibilities revolved around inventory, I had legitimate reasons to cross-check supplier receipts. I pored over every invoice and matched them against the amounts logged in our system. That's when I uncovered that the discrepancies weren't random at all. Each instance pointed to a consistent siphoning of funds. The difference wasn't astronomical, but it was enough to raise red flags if anyone cared to look closely. I was unsettled, so I brought my father into the loop. He told me to let my sister clarify before jumping to conclusions, but I sensed an undercurrent of worry in his voice. Privately, I worried. I approached my sister again, hoping for a straightforward explanation. She narrowed her eyes and insisted that I was overstepping. According to her, the supposed errors were simply delays in entering data, which she blamed on a new filing system our mother had introduced. She made it sound like I was prying into her domain without cause. It stung more than I expected, especially when she accused me of trying to undermine her work in front of our parents. I tried to keep my emotions in check, but the frustration got to me. I reminded her that we were both here to protect our family's interests, and if something didn't add up, we had a responsibility to dig deeper. She laughed it off, saying I was acting paranoid. That's when she casually suggested I might be the one slipping up, hinting that if anyone was losing track of numbers, it was me. Her insinuation rattled me. Over the course of the next few days, I started noticing subtle changes in her demeanor. She'd linger around my workstation whenever I logged onto our system, and sometimes she'd hover near the filing cabinets I used. It felt like she was looking for an opportunity to catch me in some alleged mistake. One evening, I stayed late to reconcile a backlog of invoices. While I stepped out to get some coffee, she was standing by my desk when I returned. She barely tried to hide her annoyance when I asked if she needed something. Instead, she muttered that I looked tense and should relax. That night, I couldn't shake the suspicion that she was actively trying to sabotage me. The next morning, I decided it was time to document everything meticulously, from my logins to the receipts I processed. If she was plotting something, I wanted evidence on my side. My guard went way up. My father noticed the tension between us. Over dinner one weekend, he asked if there was a rift he should know about. I only said that we'd been disagreeing about accounting issues, leaving out the heavier suspicions. My mother, though, sensed there was more going on. She asked if I needed assistance with financial cross-checks. I told her I was handling it. Deep down, I felt torn because I knew my sister might be stealing from the business, yet we had no solid proof that she wasn't just mishandling numbers. After all, embezzlement is a serious accusation, and I didn't want to blow up our family unless I was absolutely certain. Secretly, I planned to secure more evidence. I even consulted a friend who had experience in forensic accounting, but I kept it discreet so that no one in the family would suspect my plan. My resolve intensified that night. A turning point came the following week. I discovered a box of invoices in the storage room that hadn't been filed. On closer inspection, these documents showed clear disparities between the actual purchase costs and the amounts recorded in our main system. They were hidden so poorly that it seemed more like a hurried attempt to hide evidence than an organized scheme. I confronted my sister with a couple of those invoices, stating plainly that these numbers didn't match. She refused to even look at them and stormed off, saying I was hunting for excuses to tarnish her reputation. Later that day, I found a note on my desk warning me to back off. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting looked suspiciously similar to hers. This was no longer about a misunderstanding. It felt like she was trying to frame me as the instigator while covering up her own wrongdoing. A cold dread crept over me. I decided it was time to take more drastic measures. With help from my friend, the forensic accountant, we set up a system of cross-referencing data that would track every invoice and expense in real time. We used separate spreadsheets and stored them on a password-protected folder only I could access. Within a few days, we uncovered more gaps, adjusted numbers that aligned with previously missing funds. While I was quietly collecting this intel, my sister ramped up her hostility. She began telling our parents that I was becoming obsessive and that my interference would ruin our client relationships. My mother confronted me, worried I was overextending myself. I tried to explain that something was wrong with the bookkeeping, but without definitive proof, I just looked stubborn. Behind the scenes, I kept amassing copies of every suspicious entry. I was determined to confront her with undeniable evidence and see how she reacted. My patience was running thin. The confrontation happened late one evening after we closed up shop. My sister was still at her desk, flipping through ledgers and tapping away on her calculator. I approached her calmly, holding a folder stuffed with printed spreadsheets and highlighted discrepancies. I explained that I had cross-checked the figures and found undeniable proof of systematic embezzlement. Her face went pale, but she immediately tried to turn it around on me. She claimed I was the one tampering with the records to cast suspicion on her, and that I'd probably doctored everything just to push her out of the business. I refused to back down. I laid out invoice after invoice, showing how the missing money always lined up with entries she approved. She lunged for the folder, desperate to tear it up, but I managed to pull away in time. In that moment, I realized I had to go to the authorities. Her desperation confirmed everything. I locked the evidence in a secure cabinet and called my father. I told him I needed to discuss something urgent. When he arrived, I presented the documents in front of both him and my mother. My sister hovered at the doorway, arms crossed, her expression livid. I methodically walked them through each suspicious transaction, explaining how the numbers lined up. At first, my father looked devastated, as though he couldn't fathom his daughter doing such a thing. My mother, however, took one look at my sister's face and seemed to realize I wasn't fabricating. My sister tried to interject, insisting I was forging the data, but the evidence was too consistent. My parents demanded an explanation from her. Instead of coming clean, she began hurling accusations at me, claiming I orchestrated a smear campaign. That's when I mentioned my decision to involve law enforcement if she didn't own up. Her face blanched at the threat. She lashed out, claiming I was only doing this because I was jealous of her role and wanted to take over the financial side of the business. When my parents pressed her further, she exploded in a tirade about how she deserved better compensation for her hard work and that the family never appreciated her. She even insinuated that our father had always favored me, leaving her with menial tasks. I couldn't believe how entitled she sounded, as though years of trust meant nothing. My father tried to calm her, but she shoved his hand away. The tension hit a boiling point when she screamed that I was trying to ruin her life. In that moment, I stepped out to call the local police station, explaining that I had substantial evidence of ongoing embezzlement. I knew that once the authorities got involved, there'd be no turning back for any of us. My nerves truly surged deeply. In the days that followed, I provided statements and copies of all relevant documents to the police. They launched an initial investigation, gathering records and interviewing our family. My sister refused to say much, other than denying any involvement. She tried to plant the idea that I'd orchestrated everything for personal gain. Thankfully, the forensic evidence spoke for itself. Each doctored entry led back to her login credentials, and all those suspicious invoices were traced to her oversight. My parents were in shock, torn between wanting to protect their daughter and recognizing the severity of her actions. Meanwhile, I felt a complex mix of guilt and vindication. Guilt, because turning my sister in felt like a betrayal. Vindication, because I'd known something was off and refused to let her frame me. The family business's reputation was on the line, and I couldn't let her sink us all for her greed. Justice felt long overdue indeed. Eventually, the authorities found enough cause to charge her with embezzlement. My father had to remove her from the company's finances immediately. A part of him still hoped it was all a misunderstanding, but the evidence crushed that optimism. Faced with legal consequences, she begged us to drop the charges in exchange for disappearing quietly. I refused. The damage was done, and she needed to face real repercussions. On police advice, we installed updated software and stricter checks, realizing how deeply she had manipulated the books. If I hadn't fought back, I might have been her scapegoat. In the end, she was booked, awaiting her day in court. My parents still wrestle with grief, and I feel a lingering mix of heartbreak and relief. Although this ordeal shattered the illusion of our tight-knit family, I've learned that loyalty means nothing without honesty. Sometimes seeking justice is the only way forward. It hurts, but necessary.